Hey guys, you're listening to Metal Matters, a weekly Gimme Radio podcast. I'm your host, Mike Hill. If you like metal, punk, hardcore, or anything extreme, you've come to the right place. So subscribe and never miss out. Fellow Gimme Radio DJ Diane Farris joins us this week for another episode of Classic Records. This time around, we tackle the Misfits classic, Walk Among Us. And Diane and I get deep. We share some of our personal experiences with the record and some personal experiences with the band. Unfortunately, I never was able to catch the Misfits when they were around. I was exiled out in the suburbs. I missed out. I did not check them out in any of the reunions. Maybe I'll see them on this next round of reunion shows. Maybe not. Anyway, we'll see. If you guys enjoy the show, please share on your social media, tell your friends, leave a review on iTunes. On Facebook, I'm Michael Hill. You can find me on Instagram at Michael_DC_Hill. And you can also check out my other podcast, Everything Went Black. It's started out as music, and now it's gone into some other realms. And if you're interested, check it out. Well, what's sort of timely and meaningful about this whole thing is you being from New Jersey.
Yes.
We're going to be talking about Jersey's own Misfits.
We are. This is exciting.
And one of the prides of New Jersey, the Misfits.
I would say so.
Yeah. And the funny thing about the Misfits, so many different types of people, and that's expanded too, actually, in the more recent years, are fans in the Misfits. I mean, you got punks, you got people into heavy metal, you got people into thrash, whatever. And now it's like more recently and I don't really acknowledge the newer Misfits stuff as much, but there's like this whole other wave of like younger kids, I think, that like the band.
Yes.
Yeah.
There is. I think that's a lot to do with their marketing. Like there's always a new Misfits t-shirt out. I swear, it's like every month there's like a new design. If you like go on their website, it's like there's something new. They do a really good job of marketing themselves and, creating new designs or repeating shirts that are really popular and that kind of thing. And the Crimson Ghost is, who doesn't like that image?
It's iconic.
Yeah, completely. Yeah.
It's funny. A few years ago, I read this book, and I'm not going to name the title because I'm going to say something that's a little disparaging about the book.
Oh, okay.
So I got real excited because I love reading, books about some of my favorite bands. Mm-hmm. I'm a big music book reader.
Yeah, me too. Yep.
And this one was about the Misfits. Okay. And I was like, wow, this is cool. I have like that photo book that Yuri Vaughn did. That was great.
Yes.
And now this sounds like it would be a really cool like compliment, to read that. So I started reading the preface to the book, and the writer got into the Misfits post Glenn Danzig. Okay. Did not know that Glenn Danzig was ever in the Misfits. Okay.
How could you write a book? How could you be qualified to write a book?
He talks about this in the preface to the book, and he's like, yeah. So, I found out, it sounds like that. I heard this other record, Walk Among Us.
Oh, no.
And I said, damn, it sounds like that heavy metal guy from the band Danzig singing in it. And I was like, I did read the book, okay, because I had to. I'm one of these guys, once I start reading something, I finish it. I don't abandon things, you know what I mean?
Yes.
So I made my way through this book, and he had a couple of interviews with some of the members. Like he had Jerry in there. Mm-hmm. No Glenn. Okay.
Yeah.
So I'm like, man,
that's a big missing.
If you can't write the book without interviewing Glenn Danzig, you don't have it.
You can't write the book without the knowledge of what Glenn Danzig contributed to the band, regardless of even if you're going to write it covering the post Glenn Danzig stuff.
Yeah.
You cannot. You have no business doing that.
Yeah. So I didn't want to throw this guy under the bus anymore, but
I'll throw him under the bus. I didn't even read the book, but that's like, why would you even attempt to write that book if you don't know about what you're writing?
Yeah, I'm surprised that it was able to get published, really, but there you go, it's out there.
Yeah.
But I'm not going to mention the title or the writer because I don't want to mislead people down the path of thinking this is like a valid document of a band that is very important to me and you.
Yeah.
So that segues into tonight's classic episode, Misfits, Walk Among Us.
Yes.
And that's going to, out of all the Misfits records, this one, we have, we had our staff meeting, and we decided that Walk Among Us would be the first entry from the Misfits into the Gimme Radio, Metal Matters Classic Records.
Absolutely.
Yeah. So this is
what's it, 83?
Okay. This record came out March 1st, 1982.
Okay.
First to be released, but actually the third to be recorded. Static Age and 12 Hits from Hell were actually recorded first. Did you know that?
I think I did know that.
Did you also know that this record was reissued by Earache in November of 2018?
I do know that.
Yeah,
Yeah, with
I didn't know that.
666 copies.
And there was like 6 variant colors.
Yes.
Do you have any of those?
No, I have the original pressing.
All right. I mean, but some
you know,
people, there
yes.
are those out there that would have all 6 of those probably.
Right. Yeah, absolutely. And, good for Earache for understanding what an important record this is and doing that. Now, wait, when was it put out? 2018.
It was put out in 2018.
18.
And so it was like just last year that came out.
So it's 618. So 6 times 3 is 18. 666. I wonder if it was released on like June 6th or something like that.
That'd be kind of cool.
Yeah, yeah. But, I mean, Earache always figures out things. Digby is pretty smart in terms of making an investment and reissuing something. And he has that background too. I mean, he was around back then.
Oh
so
yeah. No, I mean, I'm not sure. I mean, they're definitely not new jacks. I just didn't even know it came out. I mean, actually, it's only like a year.
Yeah.
So
I don't know if I've seen them. I wouldn't say that I've seen them necessarily. Do you know what cover? Is it the purple or the pink cover?
I believe it's the pink cover.
Okay.
And then there's like 6 different colors.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, of the vinyl. That is.
Yeah. That's good. It is. It's a classic record.
Yeah.
I mean, do it,
So the production of this record, similar to a lot of records from that era, was done in pieces and in a variety of different places. And it's sort of like a patchwork. Back in those days, there wasn't the big budgets to go around. So
right.
You kind of made it happen. You know what I mean? So the original production was done in a variety of different studios. Early 1981 at the Mixolydian Studios in Boontown, New Jersey.
It's Booton.
I
used to work in Booton.
Booton. Okay.
Boonton. There's no W in there in case that's how you're reading it. But yeah.
And New Soundland in Fair Lawn, New Jersey. Mm-hmm. Did I say that right?
Yes, you did.
Okay.
Sorry.
Little Fair Lawn, New Jersey, if anyone remembers, is where Travis Bickle claims to have been from.
Oh, really?
When he's questioned by the CIA guys, the Secret Service guys, and taxi driver.
I can vaguely remember that.
Yeah, you remember funny. like when he's scoping out that the guy he's going to try to murder, to try to assassinate that one politician.
Yeah.
And this Secret Service guys get hip to him as being a possible threat. You know what I mean? So they start questioning him, and he's like, "Oh, how do you become a Secret Service guy? What kind of guns you guys carry and all this stuff?" And then he said, "Oh, well, let me take down your address because they're going to put on file."
Of course.
So of course he makes up a fake address, and it was in Fair Lawn, New Jersey.
Interesting.
Yeah. The live recording of "Mommy, Can I Go Out and Kill Tonight" was recorded at the Ritz on December 17th, 1981. Mm-hmm. And that was during the same show that they recorded "Evil Live" too.
Yeah.
So they got a little bang out of their buck by bringing up the old portable recording rig.
Yes.
And they got 2 records worth of material, out of that one, even though it's one song.
And just the fade out during that song when it goes into London Dungeon, it always gets me. It's always like, oh.
Yeah. That's a great, London Dungeon is one of my favorite songs.
It's a great mood song, yeah. It really is.
And the Ritz, for anyone out there who's not ancient, like Diane and I, used to be probably one of the like premier like mid-sized clubs in New York City.
Oh yeah.
In the late 70s, 80s.
I saw everybody there.
Yeah.
And then it became Webster Hall. I mean, it's still a great room.
Right. But the Ritz, for me, because I actually you had a little bit of a trek to get into the city to see shows too, right?
Yeah, but I went every week.
Because I didn't grow up in
3 times a week sometimes.
Yeah, I grew up like north.
Yeah.
Just above Westchester County, which is probably meaningless to you guys who don't live in the tri-state area.
Right.
But I used to take the Metro North into the city, and I've seen several shows at the Ritz, the Cramps. I saw X there. Mm-hmm. Motorhead.
Yeah, with Wendy O. Williams and the Cro-Mags.
Hold on a second. The Motorhead show that I saw there was Vulcan Death Grip.
Oh. Motorhead,
and I want to say that the Plasmatics were on that show too.
Okay. Yeah, because he played a lot with her.
Yeah.
With them, yeah.
Yeah. And so yeah, I mean it was like the spot, and it was like one of those places. Once again, I would get the local, like we would get the New York Times and the Post and all that. And I remember back in those old days, there would be the listings of all the things that were going on in the city. They'd have like all the porno movies, that were playing on 42nd Street, and they'd have like listings for CBGBs, and they have listings for the Ritz. And I just remember being a kid, like looking at these bands and being like, oh, this is like, this is where I have to end up somehow. Somehow I got to find my way into these places. So so that's why I thought it was really cool that the Ritz, this is where they recorded this.
Yeah, it's an iconic place in New York's music history.
Yeah.
For sure.
Danzig ended up remixing the material and added more guitars at this place called Quad Tech in L.A. And he also tracked new vocals for Vampira at this session too. Mm-hmm. So yeah, this is like a project that seemed to span over the course of the year to make this record.
Yep. Well worth it.
Oh yeah, definitely. Program length was 24 minutes, 38 seconds. Okay, we got
perfect.
That's the perfect length. And it's funny. I interviewed Randy, one of my other co-hosts for these classic records, and because Cable has a new record coming out. Oh, okay. And that record is like about 30 minutes long.
Yeah.
And we talked about how back in the day, really you were limited by the physical constraints of an LP at 33 and a third.
The grooves.
Yeah.
Well, Elvis Costello put out that Groove Cram record that really sounded like shit. Like it didn't work. You can't. There's just nowhere for the needle to go. It doesn't get the dynamics.
Yeah. There's a law of diminishing returns, as they might say.
Yes.
That the material constraints limit the amount of songs, a lot of program length you can have on a long playing record. Mm-hmm. So there's something there's like this sort of forgotten sort of beauty in that. I think is that okay? This is all the time you get.
Yeah.
Make it count.
Get in, get out.
Get in, do your thing, make an impact, and that's all you get. As opposed to these days where, certain bands put out double LPs as their release. Digital, you can have like hundreds of minutes available.
Right, yeah.
And it almost is, there's a lack of economy, I think, in the way people write albums these days. So, I mean, some of my favorite records are short. Slayer, Rain and Blood. It's like, 25 minutes or something like that?
Yeah.
28 minutes maybe?
Yeah.
So, I don't know. Just...
Yeah, no, it's an interesting point that you bring up, and I haven't really been present to it. But now, it's like there's so many bands, so many of the, like, sort of depressive metal bands where it's like one song is longer than one side of a record could physically be.
Yeah.
Like, and that's kind of a drag. It's like I like working within constraints. Sometimes I feel like it makes you hone your work better. And I'm actually talking more about like artistic stuff or doing editing, like doing a radio show and that kind of thing. But it's like, oh, I've got to choose this, or I've got to segue this, or I've got to really cut this interview or something. But I think certain restrictions are good. They make you have to work a certain way. Because if you have everything your way all the time, I mean, artists are artists. I mean, it'll just be like, yeah, here's my new song. It's like 4.5 days long.
Yeah, it becomes self-indulgent.
Yeah, totally.
And that's like one of the things that I think you grab this record and it's short, but it doesn't feel short because all the songs have such like a high impact.
Oh yeah.
And like I don't think I listen to Walk Among Us and I don't feel like when it's done I don't feel like I need more. It's like the perfect sort of
it's
impact.
a perfect. I would almost say it's a perfect record.
So the track listing is like this: Side A, 20 Eyes, I Turned Into a Martian, All Hell Breaks Loose, Vampira, Nike A Go-Go.
I'm just like back here like going like yay.
Hate
silently.
Breeders, Mommy, Can I Go Out and Kill Tonight?
Live.
Side B, Night of the Living Dead, Skulls, Violent World, Devil's Whorehouse, Astro Zombies, and Brain Eaters. Now this record came out on Slash and Ruby.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
There was a plan for Plan 9, which is Danzig's label, to release this record, but that never saw the light of day, apparently.
I think mine is a Ruby Plan 9.
Really?
Yeah.
Huh.
Yeah. I could be wrong, but I'm not positive, but I think it is.
And you have like, cause like there's like an alternative track listing for that too. But apparently the information I have, and once again, I've been known to make mistakes from time to time. Apparently, my information told me that it never came out, but
I don't know.
Okay, is this the track listing? And I'll read it off. Side A, 20 Eyes, I Turned Into a Martian, Astro Zombies, Vampira, All Hell Breaks Loose, Nike A Go-Go,
yeah.
Devil's Whorehouse. Side B, Night of the Living Dead, Skulls, Violent World, Horror Hotel,
No.
Gould's Night Out, and American Nightmare.
No, I don't have that one.
That's the one that apparently was supposed to be the official Plan 9 version that never came out.
Okay.
Yeah.
So I'm not positive what I have. I know it's Ruby, but I thought it was Plan 9 also, and who knows?
I mean, he might have snuck his logo on there,
Right.
But this one apparently it was supposed to be an exclusively Plan 9 release, but it never happened. The personnel on the record is Glenn Danzig on vocals and guitar on a variety of songs. He plays guitar on several tracks. Vampira, Devil's Whorehouse, Astro Zombies. He overdid a bunch of guitars on those tracks. Jerry Only on bass, backing vocals. Doyle on, and I'm going to say this in air quotes, lead guitar.
Yes.
Backing vocals. Arthur Googie on drums.
Nice.
The engineering and production was done by Mike Taylor. He was the engineer on all tracks except for Hate Breeders. And Pat Burnett was the engineer on Hate Breeders. So, yeah, that's that's all the little details about this record, And so now your relationship with the Misfits, because that it's a band that you actually experience. Me too, in a way. I mean, I wasn't into them when they were around. I caught them at the very, very tail end. You know what I mean? And I never got a chance to see them in their full glory, so to speak. So as a young lady, was this something that grabbed you right away, or what's your relationship with the band, your entry point?
So I bought the 7 inches and the albums when they came out.
Right.
And they were part of sort of like the New York version of punk, and everybody, they played on Halloween at Irving Plaza, and that was kind of like when you went to go see them. And then I actually DJ'd a Misfits show in Jersey City, I think it was called the Charis Club. The owner, his name was Alex, and he had something to do with Club 57 at Irving Plaza. It was like a Polish hall. Yeah. But I DJ'd that show, and I don't remember who else was on the bill, and I actually gave him tapes to play at Irving Plaza. But so I would go see them, and I was really, like, I liked them, and I wasn't like, this is the best band in the world at all, because there was also New York hardcore that was happening, and I was really into a lot of other hardcore around the country. So the Misfits, to me, were like kind of more of a pop band. But I still really like what they did. I loved all the horror references. I loved that they were from New Jersey. And it's funny because now, like, they're so popular and it's practically a posthumous thing.
Yeah.
But they weren't really liked. Like, they really, I mean, the Halloween shows were sort of different, I think, because it was Halloween.
Right, it was like a sort of
But
a
in general,
novelty
like,
to that.
and I've always had really varied tastes in music. So, I can like this, and, I loved, like, my pop punk and my rock and my metal and all types of stuff mixed up. And I used to sometimes carry a boombox when I would go to shows at, like, CB's and A7 and stuff like that. And people would say, like, well, that's not hardcore. And I'm like, you're right. And so, like, but that was sort of, there was a little bit of that mentality in regards to the Misfits, and then later even the Undead too, because Bobby Seale used to hang out all the time,
right.
at CB's and A7 and stuff. And Bobby Seale was the original guitar player of the Misfits many years ago. And so they weren't really, loved in the region, and New Jersey just didn't have enough punks to, like, support. But they kept on going.
Yeah.
And that was the thing. And that's what I was like, for me, like the Misfits 7 inches, it was like we were talking before about 7 inches. I'm not sure if the mic was on or off,
No, that's off mic. We talked about that.
So we were talking about
refer to it though.
Yeah. So I have a huge 7-inch collection, and to me, they were like greeting cards. It's just like, or even postcards, like, oh, look, I went here and I came back with the 7-inch. Like, it's almost like a wish you were here kind of thing. And I loved their series of 7 inches. And, there was interesting artwork. It was all horror based. And like this, like, I liken it to this series of 7 inches that the Buzzcocks had. Like, those all had really, really similar looks. And it was just sort of like, it became like this collector thing for the music and for the art. So I was aware of and very appreciative of them, but they didn't necessarily play all the time either. But when this record came out, when this album came out, and when you could hear cohesiveness from song to song to song, I do remember really getting this, like, vision, like, just kind of like, whoa, like that was at that time I was just like, Glenn Danzig is a genius, like for real. And we'll get into it when we start talking about some of the tracks and stuff, but I think that there's one song on that record that's kind of like a fuck you to the New York hardcore scene.
Oh, really? Okay.
I mean, not lyrically, but I just think so, because I was there and I know that they were not popular. But Misfits played with like the Necros and the Meatmen on like the Process of Elimination tour and all that. So they were included, but it was almost like that was that show was at A7 and at the Mud Club. And it was the three of them, and I don't know if technically the Misfits were like the local opener. I don't know if they were on the whole tour, and the Misfits were not on the Process of Elimination EP. That's what on Touch and Go. But so I'm guessing they were the local opener. And I remember like the hardcore bands were like, what the fuck? Like the New York bands, because the Misfits were, I can't explain it, but they were not a New York hardcore band. Like they just weren't.
Well, yeah, I mean, they clearly, I mean, if you just they don't look like a hardcore band.
No.
And they definitely don't sound like a hardcore band. So yeah, I mean, they were part of like the punk, the overarching punk scene.
Exactly.
Yeah.
I mean, that's it. They were part of the scene for sure. And they were fantastic. I mean, it really took a while for the region, I think, to warm up to them. And I have to just say, like, in my personal dealings over the years, like Jerry is one of the nicest guys, like ever. He's always been really generous, like in terms of like, giveaways for radio and that kind of thing. Like the Misfits, Jerry and Glenn, I know that they may not have much of a personal relationship now, but they definitely grew up knowing or understanding in some way how to do business as a band and how to like put out something and then leave them wanting more. Like the whole thing with like their 7 inches and all
Fiend
that.
Club.
Yeah, the Fiend Club. Like, I'm sure there were other bands that did it, but it just really seemed masterful and mature at the time to me. And I mean, they're older than I am, but still, like, it was like, of course I'll join. Like, of course, like, oh, it's like everybody in the pool,
Well, I always thought it was like a cooler version of the Kiss Army in some ways.
Yes.
You know what I mean?
Yes.
Because like, my impressions of the Misfits, like, because I got into them. I'm gonna be honest. I got into them because for Metallica, really. You know what I mean?
Okay.
It's like I didn't know about the band until I started, because I was definitely more into metal, like when I was like a young kid. You know what I mean? And then I started hearing punk and hardcore, and the punk stuff I liked. I really dug, the Germs and X, and bands like that. It took me a while to come around to hardcore because of the lack of a playing ability that most of the bands had. The two bands that really turned me on, like around on that, were the Bad Brains,
of course,
Circle Jerks, Black Flag, and then the Cro-Mags.
Yeah.
Those, when I heard Age of Quarrel, I was like, okay, this is like why people would listen to hardcore.
Right.
So anyway, that's a little digression, but when I started seeing James Hetfield and those guys wearing Misfits t-shirts, I was like, what's this band of Misfits, man? This is like, they look exactly like something I would be into, because I loved horror movies and, Marvel comics. Like I always equated the Misfits with Tomb of Dracula, like the black and white Marvel like magazine-sized comic book that came out back in the 80s.
Oh. And
it was like the mature, like Dracula, black and white, very gothic looking,
cool.
And cool stories. And their whole thing, like the skull, it all was very comic book to me. You know what I mean? And that's what attracted me to the imagery that I saw on the t-shirts. So the first record I actually bought was Legacy of Brutality.
Oh, cool.
Because it just sounded like a badass. That was a great name. I'm like,
yes.
Fuck yeah. Brutal, Brutality. And it was not what I expected, because I bought it without ever actually hearing them.
Right.
And I was like, okay, I thought it was going to be like this kind of thrash like thing,
Yeah, no, it's poppy.
But what really
with hooks
grabbed me though was I was like a huge fan of like X and the Gun Club and all these other bands, and like the sort of rockabilly 50s doo-wop vibe, Elvis.
Absolutely.
That is what grabbed me. Yep. And also being from the tri-state area, my family, like my mom and dad are from the Bronx, and like they grew up listening to like girl groups.
Right.
And like doo-wop music.
Right.
And so that was always in the house when I was a kid. So I grew to love that music as well. Elvis, Roy Orbison.
Yeah.
And that was like, when I heard Glenn's vocals and his lyrics, that with the Ramones-like approach to the music, it was like, this is better than the Ramones. Because once again, the Ramones, that was another band that got me into punk. But like, to me, I was like, man, the Misfits are way better than the Ramones when I first heard this material. And I was like, so to me, they never were like a hardcore band. They were more in this kind of like whimsical, dark horror werewolf music or something. You know what I mean? And that was how I got into the band. And then, then I heard Walk Among Us, and that has like almost all my favorite songs on it.
Yeah.
You know? And that was like in the 80s, like the mid to late 80s is like when I started. So it was after the fact. Like it wasn't when they were around. You know what I mean?
And I just have one thing to say, because I was at the Birch Hill in Old Bridge, New Jersey to see Anthrax, and the members of Metallica were there wearing Misfit shirts, watching Anthrax. And I knew that all that stuff was going to shift. And I like, you know, and I think so it was like probably a year after this record came out that the first Metallica came out.
Yeah.
So Kill 'Em All and the first Suicidal record may have come out the same week because I bought them at the same time. And there was just that, like, it was on.
Yeah,
like,
totally.
Like those years were just really sick when it just comes to, like, when you look at, like, what came out and what came out next and what came out the next week and all that kind of stuff. Like, there was so much electricity in the air and, like, sharing of ideas and osmosis and stuff. The world was just so great and so, like, full for music.
Yeah, you know, and music that was, like, almost completely secret from, like, normal people, too.
Yes.
You know what I mean?
And would offend other people.
Yeah.
I mean, especially at that time, you know, I was a kid. I was totally into it. Like, oh, look, they're staring at me and what shirt am I wearing or, you know, whatever. But that's just what you did, you know.
You know, and for me, like growing up, like out in the hinterlands, like I did, close to the Connecticut border. And I've talked about this shop a couple times, so I don't want to bore everyone out there, but I'm going to talk about Trash American Style in Danbury, Connecticut. Malcolm.
Yes.
That guy, everything that I got into from this period, it was really goes back to, I probably bought it from him, you know, really. All these records that I'm talking about, Gun Club records, X, all this stuff.
Yeah.
I pretty much got from Malcolm, you know, and even the Misfits, you know what I mean? It was stuff that's like where the secret music was able to be found, you know, because you couldn't get it. Like, you know, the world back then was like this kind of generic sort of middle road. It was like being in an airport, you know, or something like that. And then you would have to go to these like remote places that barely existed, you know, and find this kind of stuff, this kind of culture, you know what I mean? And where was the record store that you went to? It was all like Bleecker Bob's, that kind of stuff?
I went to a lot of shows in the city, so I would go to Bleecker Bob's after gigs because they were open really, really late, and I would always buy a 7-inch. And then I did a lot of shopping at, like, you know, Sounds and Venus, and there are probably some other ones. 99. I went to 99 Records a lot too. And then there was I think it was Irvington or Union, Rebel Rouser, that Sal from Electric Frankenstein used to own. And there were a couple places in Jersey, and I did a lot of mail order records,
mail order
too.
was big, yeah.
I used to get stuff from Cross Country, who I think were from D.C., and Moby, who was from the West Coast. And I remember being in Bleecker Bob's and seeing the first Minor Threat 7-inch, seeing the red one, and I knew I had it on order, so I didn't buy it. And when I got mine in the mail, it was the yellow one.
No.
And I was like, oh. And I didn't know, like, I didn't even know. I just knew it was out. I didn't know about the covers. I didn't know anything. I was like, oh, mine is a different cover. And then, you know, I was like, oh, I saw that. But the funny thing is about, like, the underground, it's like so many of the British bands were on major labels. Like, there was a lot of British stuff you could buy in, like, your local Sam Goody
Clash,
or whatever.
for one.
Yeah. You know, and all, like, Susie and the Banshees, 999 was on Polydor, you know. But we were creating our own underground here. Like, the world of retail and distribution and things like that was not that kind to the punk scene, which I think was perfect. It wouldn't have been a punk scene. It wouldn't have been an underground scene if it weren't for, you know, the kids actually keeping it underground. Like, how many bands did you write to? Like, I
didn't really write to too many bands.
I wrote to bands all the time.
Yeah.
Like, all the time. There were ads in the back of Maximum Rock and Roll. I'd, like, send somebody $2 and get, like, a record in the mail.
I had pen pals from Maximum Rock and Roll. Like, I wrote to other people that were, you know, but I didn't actually write to bands, honestly.
Yeah.
You know, I always felt like a little too, like, you know, they don't want to hear from me, man. You know, like.
Oh, I would always send them money for their record. You know,
Yeah.
I'd be like, here, send me your record.
I ordered a lot from SST, like the SST catalog.
Yes, yeah.
Because when I got into Black Flag at that age, that was like the hooks. Like, that is like, once I discovered Black Flag, I had to have everything by them, and I also had to have everything by Saccharine Trust, and I had to have everything by Husker Du, and I had to get as much of the SST catalog in my possession as possible.
Yes.
'Cause that was like the Minutemen.
The label, yeah.
You know, the St. Vitus records they put out. You know.
Bad Brains were an SST.
Bad Brains, yep. I Against I.
Yeah.
Yep. Soundgarden.
Yes.
Yeah, Ultra Mega
Yeah.
OK.
Yeah.
Yeah. So it was like, you know, that was like the mail order stuff, you know, for me. But anyway, as far as the tracks on this record, do you have any standouts? Because you teased something about one song being.
I really do.
Yeah, so let's lay it on us. What's the deal?
My favorite track on this record is sort of not a typical track on the record. It's the third track, All Hell Breaks Loose.
Okay.
So that to me is a hardcore song.
Yeah.
And I think it's completely different from everything else on the record. And I have to tell you, when I put that record on at home, I remember, like, I'm like, oh, cool, like 20 Eyes. I turned into a Martian. I'm like, this is awesome. Of course I turned into a Martian too. And when this song started, I was just like, because it has that, like that downstroke bass that just dunk, 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 dunk. And there's a part in there where I swear you can hear the texture of the bass string. Like you can really hear that, like that coiled. You absolutely can. And halfway through the song, when it clicks up and it gets faster and the guitar goes into that higher register, I remember just turning my head and staring at the turntable, just being like, what the fuck? Like that song for me for years was like my wake up and get ready to kick ass song. Like, cause it's just so like I can't, like even now when I imagine the song, I like clench my fists and start like punching things. Yeah. And if I hear it, and I mean, the only time I hear it is when I'm playing. It's not like I hear it in the supermarket or anything, but if I'm like talking to somebody on the phone or I've got this record on in the background or something like that, I'll be like, hang on a minute. And I'll just be like, whoa, like, you know, like I can't not react to that song. There's just something really visceral there. And it's just so like, oh, and like, listen, the lyrics in there, he says, I send my murdergram. Like Glenn Danzig is making up words to create an environment. And that's where I say genius.
Oh, yeah.
That's where that comes in. Because it's like, are you kidding me? He's creating a vocabulary for who the Misfits are. Mm-hmm. And everybody bought into that. And most of the lyrics on the entire record use the word I. They use the first person. So when you're singing along, you're saying I, like you belong, like you're there, right there with them. And that's where that record, like their singles are the same way, but they're singles.
Right.
And this is like, 12 songs. And I have to kind of leave off Brain Eaters, because I really don't like Brain Eaters. But anyway, like it's just like the whole album, it creates some kind of like, I don't want to say possession, but it's just like, oh, like you're going through something when you're listening to this record. And I don't know if it's the same for somebody who listens now, you know, especially if they're like older, you know, because this was my growing up period. And I was still really angry, you know, like as a person. And this was just like, you know, like, yeah, like I want to kill somebody. I'm a Martian. Like, you know, like, yeah, like signed in their parents' blood. Like there's just so many just delicious lyrics in this record. It's unbelievable. Like it really is. There's a whole bunch. There's like 3 or 4 made up words. And I remember just starting to really read the lyrics. And there's a lot of lyrics that are more like guy lyrics, and I don't necessarily sing along. But when I was reading, like, there's another, murderlation, right?
That's
in
another.
Hatebreed, yeah, right? Like, I'm like, this is not a word either. Like this is, but it was like the enthusiasm, like the momentum was just causing them to like make up words and just like create something else for us. Like so amazing.
Well, that's the thing I think a lot of people take for granted at this stage of the game is, you know, Glenn Danzig, not only did he expand the English language with some of these words like murdergram and murderlation.
I'm going to send you a murdergram, by the way.
But And also, he has the voice of an angel, number one.
Oh,
number
my
two.
God.
Beautiful voice.
He does, absolutely. To this day.
Totally self-taught.
Yeah.
From what I've read. But he put together like such a unique look and atmosphere. Like everything was so carefully designed. Like this album cover.
Yes.
There's it's such a specific thing. There was a lot of thought put into the whole thing, a lot of intention. And that's like why I think like before I even really knew what they sounded like, all of those elements are the things that actually drew me in. Like, besides, all right, number one, like I saw Metallica wearing the t-shirts.
Right.
But I also saw Metallica wear other bands' t-shirts that I didn't get so enthusiastic about either. But there was something about the logo, the fucking skull.
Yeah.
And then when I started dialing into like what their trip was all about, I was like, man, this is, there's like a whole universe of stuff here. And that's another reason why I connected with the comic books too. It's like you read Marvel comics, there's like this world that they created that these characters operate in.
Yeah.
And in some ways I felt like the Misfits were like characters in their own universe, really, in some ways. You know? And, the look of the records, the sound, the lyrics, the new words of the vocabulary, all that sort of stuff. The way they looked, like they looked like superheroes kind of, you know what I mean, to me, or these like evil superheroes.
Yes, larger than life.
Larger than life,
yeah.
And that, harkens to what I said earlier about them being like a way cooler Kiss.
Yes.
And I like Kiss, man, don't get me wrong.
No, I do too.
But they were like a more street level version of Kiss in some ways.
Well, that's where you're right. It's street level because you see them. So one time I was driving and I was going to a horror convention, and I look in my rear view mirror and there's like a black primer Ford Bronco, maybe one of those, like an older car behind me with giant spikes, like 6-inch spikes going up the hood. And then I realized Jerry Only is driving.
Hell yeah.
And I was just like, oh my God, that's like the coolest thing I've ever seen. I mean, the street level, like they were there, Jerry was making an appearance and stuff. And and I was going to say about All Hell Breaks Loose. So for me, I think that's sort of, and I don't know anything really in terms of why, how, and how this song came out, because I think it's faster. It sort of stands out in the record.
Yeah.
But I do think that it's like kind of like a fuck you to the New York hardcore scene, because it's just like, and by the way, we're going to throw in a hardcore song, and it's better than most of the stuff that's coming out of New York right now, because they weren't popular. And I don't know if there was really any animosity, but I kind of think there might have been, but I could be talking out my ass. Like I never heard of fights or anything like that, but most of the hardcore guys that I knew were like, well, those guys, fuck them. Like, whatever.
I mean, I can imagine there not being a big response, like a positive response from that era. You know what I mean? Hardcore music, really.
But the Misfits could, and that shows that they put their mind to it and they can do anything. It's like, and here's our hardcore song. Thank you. Mic drop.
Yeah.
I
mean, Earth AD has more, faster tracks on it too.
Yes.
Like more faster metal, hardcore, thrashier kind of stuff on it.
Yeah.
Yeah. But I don't really reach for that record. I mean, I love it, but it's not my go-to.
Oh, this is the record.
This and Legacy.
Yeah.
I love Legacy, Brutality too.
Mm-hmm.
American Nightmare is like beautiful song.
Yes. Yeah. Yeah. So what's your favorite track?
My favorite track is Skulls.
Oh, see, that's my favorite track on side 2 for sure.
Yeah, that's a popular song, but that was the one that was like, I remember playing it on guitar, and I was like, yeah, this is like I tried to do it in like my little cover band I had, when I was a kid. Mm-hmm. And I was like, yeah, playing Skulls, man. The lyrics are cool. They're like, the song is like, has this like real major guitar thing going on. Mm-hmm. And then it's like, it has very melodic vocals.
Yes.
But the lyrics are like, hack the heads off little girls and put them on my wall. It's like, and that's like exactly, like the vibe when I was a kid. I was like into horror. I was into gore and being into creepy stuff like that too, and it was like perfect, man. It was like such a great song. And to this day, that's a song I just like, I'm always singing it. I'm always playing it. When I pick up my guitar, I'll play those parts of it and stuff, and be like, oh yeah, man, Skull's a great song.
It's like a sentimental song.
It kind of is.
Yeah.
It's like a very twisted, dark, sentimental song.
Yeah. But there's something about that era that just, that there was a lot of emotion in that record. And for all the right reasons, but then when you read the lyrics, you're like, wow, this is kind of wild. And now, I'm saying this now as like, a 50-plus-year-old person, like, oh, okay.
Yeah.
But at the time, it was completely relatable.
Oh, yeah, definitely. There was that period of time at that age, you like wonder if these people actually did hack the heads off little girls, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Or, like that was the era when Slayer was around. And when I started getting into Slayer, I was like, man, are these guys really into Satan and like, anti-Christian stuff and whatever, and it's like, it was just another aspect of the kind of, entity of the band, really.
Yeah. But you never know, really. In terms of exploring what you're exploring and doing music at the same time, things cross over and you don't know.
Well, yeah. Back a few years later, like things in Norway got a little crazy, with some of those bands.
Yeah.
Another track, the Mommy Can I Go Out and Kill Tonight track, too.
Yeah.
Definitely that's another track that I dig. And what I like about it is the kind of swing that song has.
It does.
Because like I said, right quick when I started listening to Misfits, I picked up on the rockabilly thing, how there was like this reverence for old school, like rock and roll, like Chuck Berry.
Yes.
And music that had like a swing to it.
Mm-hmm.
And this song has a swing.
Oh, yeah.
Like when they're singing, the verse parts of the song.
Yeah.
And I always thought that was really cool. Like you can like snap your fingers to it.
Right. Yeah. Well, and I think it's Devil's Whorehouse that has that like walking bass line.
Yeah.
Do 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 do.
Yeah.
It sounds like the beginning of like Courageous Cat and Minute Mouse, or it's like this kind of like this spy sort of theme thing, that really brings out a completely different era. But the lyrics overall are so 50s.
Yep.
And then when the Misfits were just Jerry and whoever, they did that Project 1950, didn't they?
Yep.
And that's clearly how those guys grew up and
Yeah.
what they loved. But they managed to just shift a few things and create like rock based on that, based on horror. And it's really still a very unique sound.
In a weird way. And they are very different, and maybe it's just me because I did get into the Cramps around the same time I got into the Misfits, that the bands are not that different, really. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
I know it might be blasphemous for me to say that, but I feel like I use the same brain cells to listen to the Cramps that I do when I listen to the Misfits. Or there's similar brain cells.
I can see that.
Yeah.
Yeah, because the Cramps are certainly throwback to what they honor and how they play, but they play it differently.
Yeah.
For sure. And,
yeah, totally. So yeah, the whole, like when I was that age, I was really into like classic horror too. Like Frankenstein and like the werewolf. And,
right.
And more importantly, the teenage werewolf. Okay?
Yes.
Because me being a teenager, filled with all this emotion, I related to the character of the werewolf, being this teenager.
Yeah, changing and going back and all that, yes.
So the Misfits, drawn into the horror world and then being a teenage werewolf, all that stuff really like resonated pretty heavily with me as a young man. So maybe like listening to the Misfits while watching I Was a Teenage Werewolf with the sound turned off.
Right.
Might be the ticket for you guys out there. If you're like, bored on a Friday night and you want to shake things up a little bit, you should try doing that. Try to listen to this record and watch I Was a Teenage Werewolf with the sound turned off, and then get back to me and tell me what kind of experience you had.
I think, if I were to think of it, so for me, I was more like, I loved all the Universal, monsters. I think my favorite Universal monster is the Mummy.
The Mummy's a good one.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And and I love the whole archaeology thing. And so for me, there's something and there's a transformation in the Mummy too. So I don't know, because that's sort of, the Mummy's not quite as, it's a horrific, but it's probably not addressed as much. Like the Misfits sort of sing a little bit more about monsters.
Monsters.
Yeah. Well, but the Mummy's a monster.
He's a monster.
He qualifies as a monster.
Actually, all of the classic, Universal horror, they all were human at one point, really. I mean, Frankenstein's monster was a collection of human body parts.
Yes.
Dracula, was a thousands of year ancient person who became a vampire. Mm-hmm. All right. The werewolf was a man.
Yes.
Okay. Before he got bit by a werewolf.
Right.
The Mummy, before whatever arcane powers reanimated him, was an Egyptian king.
Yes.
So they all were human. There's a humanity in all those characters.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think that's probably, I mean, I love those movies. They let you use your own imagination to scare yourself, And there's a lot of current horror things that I do like, but I do like the sort of older suspense horror things too.
And I think that Misfits definitely like they touch on, they take that. There's a flavor of that in their music, and that's another reason for me why I love it so much, because of that. It's like one of the early things that I got into, and this kind of captured a lot of it, and it was like, yeah, this is all like the most perfect combination of all these things.
I mean, this record is really, it's nearly a perfect record. And when you're talking about the live version of Mommy, it's funny because when you really listen to it, it's just cacophonous at some point. Uh-huh. And people who are younger have said to me, I don't even know why they included that on the record. And I have said to them, well, then you're not listening from the right place. And but that's how the Misfits shows were. I mean, most of the songs are not that complex. And
no, they're not at all. Yeah.
On stage, it was kind of more about being like the superheroes on stage and just doing the show, but it wasn't about being perfect. Mm-hmm. There was something more about like an overall show than like a perfection. I don't really remember anybody like going back and like taking time to tune, and I could be completely wrong.
Yeah, they're out of tune on some of the recordings. Yeah. So yeah, I'm sure they didn't even think about doing it live.
Right. Yeah. But that was just the whole being in the moment of, their shows had momentum and had audience participation, and quite often it was, like very static on both ends, like kind of like fuck you, like kind of thing. But that's what made it even cooler, because there was this interplay that could get antagonistic at any time.
Well, there's like that famous story out in San Francisco with the Misfits, and there was like some big fight or some violence at the show or whatever in San Francisco.
Is that where it's supposed to be? I think I've heard the story.
Yeah. It's out there, this story. I'll spare everybody, but if you want to look it up, there's like some San Francisco incident where someone gets hit by one of the members of the band.
Right?
Yeah, like a guitar smashes somebody.
That's what I thought, yeah.
And it was like this big Maximum Rock and Roll like controversy, and it's out there if you guys want to read about it.
Yeah. Well, you can't judge. That's just where it was at the time. And like we were saying, it was just a really crazy time for music, and people were pushing boundaries and seeing what they could do and seeing what they could get away with. And I never saw that when I saw them. I never saw anybody in that band strike anybody with their instruments, and the atmosphere was such that maybe it could have happened, So I wouldn't, I don't have any information either way on that, but just that period of time. It was also about going out and supporting whatever was happening in New York at that time too. And then, like you touched on the Bad Brains, I mean, like seeing them live was just insane. Like, because that's a band that could really play.
Oh man, yeah.
And play to like where you were just like, oh, like
on a totally different level than any band in that scene at all.
Yeah,
like, they were like John McLaughlin, Mahavishnu Orchestra playing hardcore.
Yes, and then they came over and HR was doing full flips on the stage. Like, while this was happening, it's like as if it wasn't enough to watch these other guys play. You're like, oh, and you've got an acrobat in the band. But every band that was popular or that really ended up somewhere had something. And the Bad Brains clearly had completely different aspects than the Misfits. But the Misfits had a package. Like, they really had an entire package. And I think that they did know that. Because Glenn is still successful on his own.
Oh, yeah.
And Jerry remained successful on his own. And then, did you go to any of the reunion shows?
I wasn't able to go, no.
Yeah, no, me neither.
No. It's like, part of me, I never saw the Misfits. I was maybe a few years just a little too young to go see them at the time. To travel all the way down from the hinterlands of, New York there. But I felt like if I didn't see him then I didn't see him.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like, it's just the way I felt about it, I mean, I've seen Danzig many times.
Mm-hmm.
I saw him the Legacy tour where they did all the Sam Hain and Misfits tracks and all that. But I feel like to see them reunited in some big, arena that they played in.
They played like Prudential Center.
Yeah, it would have been weird. And,
yeah.
Kind of uncomfortable. And I don't know. I mean, I probably should have went, but I didn't go.
Yeah, I didn't go. I didn't necessarily have an interest because it wouldn't be the same.
Yeah.
And they're going to sell out that show. It's like good for them.
And it's a lot of money, the tickets, if I remember correctly.
Yeah, I think so. I think they were
pricey.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But then when it came down to the day, it was like everybody I knew was going. Like, people had sort of kept quiet about it, I think because the ticket price was high. And then people were like, well, aren't you going tomorrow? And I was just like, what? They're like, the Misfits show. And I was like, no, I'm not going. And really, and I have nothing against, but it's just not time for me to see them anymore.
Yeah. Yeah.
And it's great that they're doing it. I'm sure they really, really did very well. And they deserve that. And for them to sort of be able to hash out what there was to hash out in order to do that is some pretty prime negotiating.
Yeah.
On an adult level.
Definitely.
On like a business adult level. Because there's bands that have been broken up for years where everybody's still alive and it's like, oh, there's $1 million on the table. And people are like, no. It's like, all right then. I would be willing to have a conversation. But no, good for them. Like, really. And I know people who brought their kids to see them. And I don't know if I think that they would be okay on a big stage because Danzig is good at it. Like, Danzig himself knows how to operate on a large stage.
And also the other members too. I mean, they've been playing, they've been on the road pretty consistently over the last 20 years or so.
Yeah.
Playing fairly,
I guess they have been doing pretty big venues.
Yeah.
That is true. Yeah. Because sometimes, like, when you go to something like Madison Square Garden or whatever, it's like, the stage is as big as, somebody's property. And then all of a sudden, it's like, wow.
It's a lot of real estate to cover.
Yeah, you're playing guitar and your bass player is 150 feet away from you. Like that kind of thing.
That would trip me out. Like, playing on a big stage like that would be, because when you see like Iron Maiden or something like that, they're like just props and they're like
they
running
got
all
ramps.
over the place.
Yeah,
ramps.
Yeah.
And like that might be a little too crazy for me.
There's a certain sensibility you have to have about space to be able to do that. Who did that really well? And I don't know how big it was, but I saw Kylesa open for, I'm not going to remember now. Amoebics, maybe?
I think that sounds right.
At Bowery Ballroom.
Yeah, okay.
And that's probably one of the bigger stages that Kylesa played.
Yeah.
And they really did well. And I used to see them in so many tiny little places, places where you're like standing on a staircase and they're, playing in a basement, where I really got a whole different vibe from them. Like their psychedelic was kind of showing through more, and they had lights, like they had like a backdrop of lights kind of showing and that kind of thing. And they really adapted super well to a big stage. And not everybody makes that transition, and not everybody needs to, but I'm sure the Misfits did figure that out.
Maybe if they do it again, maybe I'll go.
Well, they have to do it again.
Yeah.
You think?
I might go.
We'll check. We will check back with Mike and see.
I'll get back to everybody when they announce the dates to let you guys know if I'm going to go or not. As much as I love the Misfits, another band I love that includes Glenn Danzig is Sam Hain, and that's actually I probably listen to Sam Hain more than I listen to the Misfits these days.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Cool.
It's definitely something that's another future thing that we're going to get into. It's probably a Sam Hain record.
Mm-hmm.
So.
Yeah, because Glenn took, I think, his horror and developed it a little bit more into a darker, musical thing, which he did very well with. And I think his voice is just suited. I don't know, maybe his voice is just suited well for everything because he just has such a magnificent voice. Like he really does.
Oh, he's great.
Yeah. But somehow, I don't know. But I can't think of anything that he probably wouldn't do well at. And I do think that he really studies what he's going to sort of work on and perfects it and it just doesn't really come out. You don't hear him like sort of trying something. You don't hear him doing karaoke or anything anywhere. No. Like it's like, no, this comes out and it's just like, wow, perfect, of course,
Yeah, there's a very studied, especially as his career went on, even with Danzig, it's like there's a very intentional, studied approach to the music, It's like a very specific way of playing heavy blues rock, and then my favorite Danzig tracks are the more croony ones, you know what I mean? Like Sistinus or something like that. Like, those are the songs that I really like. But once again, it has this heavy rock thing going on, but also like a doo-wop thing, or like a Roy Orbison thing.
Right.
And it's like no one does that, and no one will ever be able to do it the way he does it.
Yeah.
And in my opinion, Glenn Danzig, he's like an American treasure, really. I mean, I think that as time goes on, he's going to enter the realm of guys like Johnny Cash and like Roy Orbison and all those people.
Yeah. Oh yeah, for sure.
Yeah.
And really like a couple of generations were skipped from that kind of singing into the it's not harmony, but it's just the way that you use your voice as an instrument that he kind of went into. I mean, I guess you could say a lot of people compare his voice to like Jim Morrison's or that kind of thing, like because it's got that sort of mid-range timbre a little, but Danzig he's got a sensibility of older music, and he just makes it work. And I think it's natural for him. I think it's absolutely natural, and I'm sure he probably grew up listening to the same thing that you're talking about, like your parents, like for sure. And
I did too. I mean, really, like my earliest memories of music was that music, because my parents, they had like 78 record, the 78s,
Oh yeah.
And singles and all this stuff, and it was all like old school, like Roy Orbison stuff, like the Shirelles, all that kind of stuff.
Is there like Dion?
Yeah, Dion. And the Belmonts.
Because he's like local, right? So he's kind of like New York. Like and I don't know, but I almost see that there's like a connection in there. Dion, Misfits,
totally.
Elvis.
And I think that's like something that a lot of people like oh yeah, it's the punk rock, man, but it's like there's like a deeper connection to regional music, really, in some ways. Like like you think about like a band like I Hate God, who's connected to New Orleans.
Yes.
You know, all those bands like I Hate God, Crowbar, you know, Goat Whore, all those bands have a New Orleans sound.
They do.
You know?
Yeah, they absolutely do.
And Danzig, Misfits, Samhain has a tri-state area sound in a lot of ways. Like it has like we were saying, like that connection to that local Dion and the Belmonts, you know, like, but a more updated version, a more relevant to the time it came out. You know? And that's like, so it's a beautiful, interesting thing about the band that some people don't even recognize, I think.
Oh yeah, no, not at all. When I think Jerry was up at FMU and was talking about putting out the Project 1950 record. I think that's what it's called. And I was like, oh, of course. Like, and then when it came out, a lot of people were saying like, well, what the hell? Blah, blah. It's like, really? Are you listening? But, and because the Misfits were under the banner of punk, people sometimes aren't listening.
Yeah.
They're like categorizing. Oh, this is cool, and it's punk. But it didn't just start like full-fledged punk. Anybody who makes music has to come from somewhere.
Yes.
And that's exactly like how it was processed through them, through their collective brains, and through their skill set. And then it came out, and it happened to fall under the punk genre. But I think that's only because that's what was new and what was happening. Like, that's what else was happening at the same time. We're trying to get gigs. Oh, these punk bands will play with us, you know. And I didn't even know how much of that there was going on. But it was new music at the time. So you're at a level and you're looking for shows.
In a way, like bands like X, you know, from the West Coast, from California, from LA, you know, they had a very strong, you know, rockabilly aesthetic. What they were doing.
For sure.
A very strong connection to classic American music from you know, the 50s. And in a lot of ways, I felt like the Misfits were like a trashier East Coast version of that kind of stuff. You know what I mean? Like, you know, like where there was like a level of sophistication to X. You know, the Misfits were like this down and dirty, like exploitation film version of that, kind of referencing stuff like East Coast music from that era, as opposed to like the country rockabilly kind of stuff.
Right.
Know, X was connecting to, you know. But yeah, I mean, and that's another reason why I love them so much is that the songs are ragers. You know, they're the perfect song to put on and get stoked to do things. You know, it's awesome. And then there's this whole other dimension to it that like you can explore, like you can think about. You know, you can, you know, expand beyond this record too and listen to, you know, American Nightmare on Legacy of Brutality, you know, and that's like, oh wow, that's a straight up like rockabilly song that they did. You know? And then that might spark you to explore some other music that they might have influenced them, you know? So it's just this kind of, it just kind of connects things back to the past and brings it more current, you know? I don't know, it's interesting.
No, it really is. And this record, Forget the Influences, is just like the perfect package. And I do just remember like sitting down and being like, okay, I'm going to read all these lyrics now. And I had a really hard time getting through side one because I kept on playing All Hell Breaks Loose. Like literally over. And I did play it through first, only because Vampira had like a really good scream to start with. Because I was just like, what was that song? Oh my God. And then like Vampira started. I'm like, all right, I'll sit here. But then I remember I was just kind of like, and I just played that song over and over and over again. And I made a tape. I made, you know, you have your inline cassette. I made a cassette of that song like 10 times in a row so that I could just turn the tape on and hear All Hell Breaks Loose 10 times in a row.
Nice.
And like do stuff, you know, like clean the house.
Yeah, because the songs
are
are short, you know, so you need...
It's a minute 47 or 46. It's like, but there's so much goodness in that like less than 2 minute period. You don't need 20 minutes. Like, come on, you know. But it's like, it's as close to a perfect record in so many ways and meanings. And like with like what's with jamming a live track in the middle of it? Like, it makes no sense from anybody's perspective, but it's great. And it's
totally.
just so well, we talked about this already, but it's just, you know, it was just really put together well. I would be surprised if you really sat down with some of those guys and they were like, yeah, you know, we figured it out. Yeah, but it's good enough. Like, I don't think so. I think this is like a master plan.
Yeah. Well, once again, thanks for coming out here. And,
Yay, my pleasure.
You know, this is another one of our favorite records.
Yes.
You know, again.
And thank you for asking about this one, because as soon as you were like, oh, well, let's do maybe like a Misfits or Danzig or Sandman, I was like, oh, okay, here we go. Here we go. I'm good. And then it got me because I don't, so like that song, I don't know when it went off my radar, but for years it was like my real like go to like pump my fist in the air good morning song. And then I had, you know, other ones over the years. I don't have one right now, but anyway, it got me back into it, and I was just like, yay, oh my god,
I'm glad I could do that. I'm glad I could facilitate that. That makes
absolutely.
You know.
It's always good when somebody causes you to like punch your fist in the air. You got to be able to do that every day. You know, it's important to remember like you're alive, like, yes. You know, and this record absolutely brought life to, you know, to just like wide open, like, oh my God, this is such a great record. So thank you for asking.
Yeah, of course. And thanks for listening, guys, and we'll catch you later.
Woohoo!
That's it for this week's episode of Metal Matters, a Gimme Radio weekly podcast. Tune in next week and see what we have in store for you. The show is available on all streaming platforms, Apple Podcasts, iTunes, Spotify, etc. Also, be sure to check out Gimme Radio, streaming on the web, iOS, or Android, for one of the best metal communities, exclusive merch, interviews with artists, and so much more. I'll catch you guys next week. Take care. Come in handy sometimes.
When you talk to somebody on the phone, do you do Skype?
Yeah.
I mean on the computer.
Yeah, Skype is like, I find that to be better quality. For a while it wasn't, though. For a while Skype I thought was terrible.
Yeah. A number of years ago it was, because I had been using Zoom, and I did an interview the other day with one of the brew people from the Decibel Fest.
Oh, which brewer?
Burnt Hickory.
Okay.
They were the ones that had like a Digits beer and a Jesus Lizard beer and a couple. They were upstairs at the top of the steps, and they sold out of their beer the first day, so they were not there the second day. But I had him on my show in 2010, and he had put out a De Kreutzen beer.
Oh,
and
wow.
I was just like, who is this guy? And that was kind of before there was a lot of the micros out there, and especially anybody who was doing a specialized beer. But anyway, so I caught up with him. I'd never met him like face to face, and I was like, oh my God, I just got. And I was like, oh. So and I told him especially for the Decibel special, whenever they end up getting all the permissions and stuff for airing all the sets and stuff.
Oh, right.
So I had said to Tyler, I'll interview one of the beer people before I even knew that my friend was there, actually. And then Dave Whitty was working for somebody too.
Yeah, I saw Dave for a second, actually.
Yeah. And actually, you saw them. They were staying in the same hotel, so I hung out with him, and I can't remember the other guy, like the brew guy's name. I think it might have been like Alex or something. But
I'm bummed that I get a chance to really hang with Dave, because I don't see him that often these days.
Dave is like work.
Yeah,
I mean,
he's always
50
busy.
million bands.
Yeah.
So it was cool to see him for 5 minutes, untethered to a drum set.
Yeah. Thanks for coming out here, Diane. Out here.